Hello and welcome back to the World Championship in Through the Ages. In the last game that you saw on my channel, I suffered my first defeat of this World Championship, which is of course not great, but thanks to my good performance in the games before, I still have a very comfortable position in the standings. However, drodriguez, with 4 games finished and 4 games yet to play, can still score up to 17 points, meaning he has still the chance to overtake me. In the game that we are taking a look at today, I will play against drodriguez and amaj, so I have the chance today to secure my first spot in the group and with that move on to the upper bracket of stage 4, which of course I want to achieve. It's also an important game for amaj because after the win of Qingqing, he is now quite in danger of finishing last in the group and getting eliminated. Before we are going to take a look at the game, I want to do some quick shoutouts because at the moment there are quite a bunch of other Through the Ages players uploading some videos on YouTube. First of all, there's Daniel, who covered the first game of his Royal League season, where he's playing in the highest division, the Emperor division, as well as uploading some 2-player tier lists to the Leaders and Wonders. Daniel is one of the top 2-player players, so definitely check out those tier lists if you want to improve your gameplay. Then we also have Peter, who has taken a look again at his tier list that he made a while ago for 4-player games and has also covered some of his World Championship games. We have Papa Boris, who has covered his World Championship games of Stage 3. And then just before I started recording, I saw that also Danny Boy, who you maybe know, has uploaded his first game review video. He has already made some other kind of videos, but he has now analyzed one of his games of the Grandmaster Division of the Intermezzo Championship. So if you're interested in seeing some more 3H's content, definitely check out those other other 3H's players. Alright, and now without further ado, we are going to take a look at the game. And all the channels that I just mentioned you also find linked in the description of the video. I'm playing the second position in this game, and first of all we will take a look at the Leaders and Wonders. We have some theater synergy in H3, Chaplin and Marlene Dietrich are there, however no Hollywood, no Fleming. We have some lab leaders with Sid Meier, Bill Gates, Steve Jobs. There is the spaceflight, the internet, the Manhattan Project, so there's certainly some synergy for science and having some labs. We have Churchill and Manhattan Project for the military, but no Gandhi. We have no Pierre. There is the Red Cross. We have the Suez Canal and James Cook, so there's some colonization payoff. We have no ocean liner service, but we have Watt and the railroad. Also the Harvard College, so there's no ocean liner, but some other strong wonders. We have Newton and Nobel for some science synergy, Bach for some theater synergy, and then Robespierre, Napoleon as the military action leaders. We have Joan of Arc as the only military action leader in H1. Genghis Khan can help with the strength. We have Gutenberg, but no Leonardo. We have Columbus, Isabella, Eleanor, who can work nicely in a colonization game. And then also Saladin as a very strong leader. We have both Great Wall and Nemichi Castle for the strength, both Forbidden City and the St. Peter's Basilica for the happy face fix, and then the Silk Road for some economical benefits. drodriguez is in first position and he starts by taking the Rome roads. That should be a good choice with all of those leaders coming down the row. Now it's my turn, and there are 2 leaders available for 1 civil action, which I could take together with the rich land, and then there's also Hippocrates and Movius available for 2 civil actions. Maybe I would like Hippocrates most out of those 4 leaders, but definitely not. I don't like him enough or more compared to those other leaders that I would be willing to miss out on this rich land. And so at the end I decided that it's finally time to go for Cleopatra again, who I played very rarely in the last year. If you maybe have seen my Leaders and Wonders video where I analyzed which Leaders and Wonders I had, how often in my tournament games in 2025. I only took Cleopatra, I think, 3 times or something in the last year. So, I think that's certainly a situation where she makes sense. Amaj could potentially take the Stonehenge away, and then there's only the Colossus coming down the row, but there's the chance that the Hanging Gardens or the Pyramids would be revealed. With both of those wonders I would be fine. The Colossus is not that ideal, only 2 stages to build, both of them quite expensive. You might have to delay the economy or miss out on using Cleopatra's resources once. So ideally I would like to either get the Stonehenge or just one of those other wonders, and that one of those things should happen should be very likely. Amaj will go for Hippocrates and the Frugality. I think that's a very justifiable pick. Then it's the Rodriguez turn. He has 2 leaders to choose from the one civil action area, and he decides to go for Alex here. We'll have 2 additional yellow tokens, one from Alex, one from the Rome Roads. With that, he also lets the pyramids stay on 3 civil actions for me. I think even if they would have dropped down to 2, I still would have just gone for the Stonehenge, which I think works quite well with Cleopatra, but now it's not even a consideration. Now it's just way too expensive, and with that I have a relatively straightforward turn ahead of me. I go for Cleopatra, take the Stonehenge. I could start by building the second lab, but I have already some additional signs from the Stonehenge, and with that I rather wanted to get my third mine going and use Cleo's resources by building a step of the Stonehenge to use her resources, and at the next turn I can then again use her resources by building the second lab. I draw the Rebellion and the Barbarians. I have a happy face from the Stonehenge, so the Rebellion might be interesting. Amaj goes for a turn where I think it might not be the ideal one, because he takes the pyramids, which might be worth it, the additional civil action, but he also spends 2 civil actions to take the engineering genius, and I think that's just too expensive. I think he should just go for building a mine and then either increasing his population, or maybe what I would do then, elect Hippocrates. I do think that's just a bit too expensive. Of course, there's a chance to finish the pyramids at the next turn, but I don't like those kind of starts too much. And of course, the Rodriguez, with having the Rome roads, would really like to see this engineering genius drop down to 1 civil action, but I think it's too big of a price to pay here for Amaj. Delaying the mine, basically only generating 1 resource out of the engineering genius. For 2 civil actions, the Rodriguez takes the Swordsman, and the Alchemy has had an interesting choice here. Some interesting cards to choose: Code of Laws, Iron, Alchemy, and he decides to go for the Alchemy, and I do think that Alchemy pairs quite nicely with the Rome roads. However, I was quite happy about it, because now both of those other cards will actually drop down to 1 civil action for me, and with that I think I have a relatively straightforward turn here. I will just go for building the second lab with Cleopatra, and then I will take both the Code of Laws and the Iron. There's of course also an engineering genius, but it doesn't work that well in the Stonehenge, and I don't know yet if I get one of those other wonders, and with the additional signs from the Stonehenge I should be able to make use out of both Code of Laws and Iron very quickly. I draw 2 cards, the Trade Routes Agreement and the Blunder. Amaj goes for Hippocrates, could now finish the pyramids, but decides against it, instead builds the third mine now, and then takes the engineering genius. So with both of those engineering genius, at least he will now be able to finish the pyramids very cheaply for only 1 real resource, the other one's coming from yellow cards. The Rodriguez seats opens the development of planning. The options for that are development of religion, settlement, and crafts. I don't have a free population for the development of religion, meaning I will probably settle on the development of settlement. The Rodriguez finishes the Roman roads, has 1 civil action left, and will use that to increase his population, which I guess makes sense, just spending his civil actions effectively and also being prepared for the development of warfare. He will then play the Legion tactic, which works well with the Swordsman that he has already taken. Now it's my turn, and it was a bit of a choice of, do I want to go for the Code of Laws first, or do I want to go for the Iron first? Ideally, of course, I want to build that step with Cleopatra to make use out of her resources, even though it could be considered to just go for 2 Iron upgrades, because then I would basically get an additional resource from the additional upgrade. So that's something to consider. And when I go for the Code of Laws, then the best way to get out of corruption is to just finish the Stonehenge. I could also increase my population and build a warrior, but I could at some point copy the Legion tactic, but I still had some small hope that maybe I could get a copy of Knights, even though I think that's not that likely at this point if I don't take them for 2 now. But I didn't want to commit a unit to a worker 2 warriors yet. And then if I go for the Code of Laws, the best way to get out of corruption would be to finish the Stonehenge, also just use my civil actions effectively. That, however, would mean that I might struggle a little bit of using Cleo's resources over the upcoming turns. Of course, maybe I will get the Imagery Castle, but I also want to get those mine upgrades, and then building those expensive steps on the Imagery Castle could make it a bit awkward, wanting to use both Cleo's resources and get those mines online. So at the end I felt it's maybe just best to start with the Iron upgrade and then go for the Code of Laws at the next turn, so that I can go for 1 upgrade and increase my population. I keep the 2 events that I have in hand, draw the Border Conflict and the Enslave. Amaj goes for Joan of Arc, has to wait with electing her, however, because of having only elected Hippocrates the turn before. He will now also build a second lab, has a copy of knights, can finish the pyramids very cheaply at the next turn, so things are now coming together for him. Has also the free religion, Fortune of Arc. Drodriguez seeds and opens the development of civil life. Will use that to, I think, upgrade, develop the alchemy for 3 science. Upgrades the lab. Was missing 1 resource to build a lab directly. However, they can do that at the next turn with taking this urban growth even at a discount. Even though taking that for 2 civil action is maybe somewhat expensive. Now it's my turn, and I decided to push the barbarians into the deck because at the moment it looks like I might not be the one who will take the lead in culture in the early game. Amaj will soon get more culture income with Joan of Arc, and Rodriguez has already a little bit of a lead, and with that I was willing to seed the barbarians to have the chance that one of my opponents loses a population. The development of agriculture is revealed. This turn I will build a step of the Stonehenge, go for the Code of Laws, and then I consider 2 main lines here. I could now just finish the Stonehenge and just take the Michi Castle, because, as you might have noticed, I missed out on the Knights. The first copy of Swordsman is gone. Amaj has Joan of Arc, Knights in hand. There is some danger in this position that I could at some point get vulnerable in the military, and the Himeji Castle would make me a lot safer here. So I do think that would be a very reasonable choice. However, it would cost me an iron upgrade, it delays my economy by a little bit. It also, I could then use Cleo's resources in the castle, so that might be fine, but it just delays my economy by a little bit, and then I also don't have a civil action left to take one of those leaders. So, and the question on whether I should take the castle, it's also the question on how good is it for me to take one of those leaders. And it might be not that bad, because both of them are available for 1 civil action. I know what I'm getting, instead of maybe waiting for Saladin, who might be the better choice, or also Gutenberg, as I haven't gone for alchemies yet, could potentially work out well. So I could wait for different leaders, could be fine, but if those are late, if I have to take them for an additional civil action, it might already not be that great. So at the end I came to the conclusion that with getting my economy going quicker and securing myself a leader for 1 civil action now, I was willing to miss out on Himeji Castle, but I'm not completely certain if it's the correct call, because I could potentially get punished by the military here. On the other hand, there are some other interesting wonders coming down the road, Silk Road, Forbidden City, so while I miss out on the castle now, I might be able to go for one of those wonders at the next turn. And so I went for an iron upgrade. The question is then, of course, which one of those leaders do I want to go for? And I do think both have a case here. I could go for Eleanor, maybe keep Cleopatra for 1 or 2 more turns, depending on how nicely I can use her resources. And then I could use Eleanor as a nice transitional leader, but maybe also as a leader who can draw me some additional cards. Maybe I could try to go for the Suez Canal, maybe I will just get a good tactic out of her additional draws. So those could be quite valuable. However, here I actually decided to go with Isabella instead. And it was a very close call. I think going for Eleanor is also completely fine. But as I said, I'm not that nicely prepared for the military at the moment with having missed out on knights. I likely have to copy the legion tactic at some point. I still need to build some infantry units. That will cost a lot of military actions. I will not get a lot of draws, and likely, even with doing that, I might be weakest anyway. And with that, I would just seed a lot while being the weakest. So Eleanor felt a bit not that ideal in the situation, while Isabella just gives me a bit of resource production, and there is some good colony payoff in this game. I have iron, so I'm easily able to put some additional resources on colonies with Isabella, and if maybe one of my opponents has just pushed a colony, maybe one that isn't that influential, like historic or strategic or developed territory 1, all of them can still be quite strong, but maybe my opponents were willing to push one of them, and maybe I could actually make use out of Isabella's colonization ability. So I went for Isabella. Electing her gets me out of corruption, so I could now also take a card of the row. Maybe the irrigation could be fine, but there's no ocean liner service for synergy, also no Machu Picchu, no Statue of Liberty, so it could still be fine to take it, but at the end I'd rather just finish the Stonehenge here, get the civil action out of the way, maybe making it a bit more easily possible for me to take already the next wonder at the next turn while still having some civil actions left. I then already copy the Legion tactic so that I at the next turn can already build 2 warriors and get a tactic in case one of my opponents actually starts building up some strength quickly. For example, the Rodriguez, maybe if we get some additional signs out of the developments, could build 2 swordsmen, and things could already get a bit dangerous if I don't copy this tactic right now. Amaj Seeds opens the development of Trade Routes. He this turn with both engineering geniuses, will finish the pyramids. However, then in order to get out of corruption, he has to increase his population and now builds a warrior, takes the irrigation. Is actually willing to collect the 30 Hippocrates token here. I think maybe electing Joan of Arc already could maybe be worthwhile, or at least it's what I might be doing here, because the peak at the next event at the beginning of the turn might already be worth more than the 3rd token, which the value of that is always a bit vague. So just seeing what event is on top can make quite a difference. Also, already having a strength more, collecting 1 safe culture. I think I probably would have elected Joan of Arc here already. The Rodriguez builds the 2nd lab, goes up to 4 science production, goes for the swordsman. So with the development of trade routes, he was actually able to develop those. Luckily for me, he doesn't go for a big military push here, which could have caused some issues for me. But of course, that would have meant that he misses out on the 2nd alchemy, which would have been quite a cost for him. It's my turn. I will go for the Forbidden City this turn, and with that I was willing to seed the Rebellion into the deck, as there is the chance that one of my opponents might get damaged by it. The development of markets are revealed, and generally I think the food would maybe be the more interesting thing to take here. However, as you can see, I actually went for the additional resources here, and the reason for that is that it allows me to go for an iron upgrade, 1 step of the Forbidden City, and still build 2 warriors to be strongest, as the event deck has just flipped. And maybe I should still just take the food. But there's maybe a chance that I will get a copy of reserves at some point. So at the end I was willing to take the resources, because building that step, upgrading a mine, building that step, going for those upgrades, increasing my population just is a very efficient use out of my civil actions, and I wasn't really willing to spend a civil action in any of those cards that are on the row at the moment. So to allow a more efficient civil action usage, I was willing to take the resources here, despite the additional food likely meaning that I actually get an additional population out. But without the resources, I also just generally would have missed the resources to go for 2 warriors, a mine upgrade, and a Forbidden City at the next turn. So at the end, the resources I think do also quite some work here. Amaj seeds, despite being the weakest, indicating that he probably didn't seed any strength events himself, is now electing Joan of Arc. The event revealed was the knowledge of the ancients, so at least I get immediately rewarded for taking the Forbidden City. Amaj then builds a knight, builds another knight, and reveals the medieval army tactics. So out of the sudden, he is quite threatening. I'm 6 strength behind, have only 2 military actions, and me not taking swordsmen or knights might actually get punished now. So I was a bit worried, but Amaj also has only 1 card in hand, so no, maybe I can have some hope that that isn't an aggression. He also is already willing to go for developing the iron to spend the civil actions efficiently. The Rodriguez increases his population, builds a swordsman, going up to 7 strength, even to 8, with upgrading a warrior to swordsman. With that he should be very safe from an aggression. Also is going for Saladin. Had to wait a while to get a new leader with after having had Alex, so that's not ideal, but at least he has the additional civil action from Saladin now. It's my turn. I definitely don't push here, and I was willing to go for the warfare here. I don't have the most science income, so it's a bit costly, but in such a situation I always take a look at the Leaders and Wonders overview, and if Robespierre is in the game, I'm certainly more inclined to spend a bunch of science despite being on low science production. And here I think the warfare just makes me a lot safer. Not going for the warfare could really cause some trouble for me if my opponents have the right cards. So I think the warfare is a necessary evil. I will take it, I will develop it, I will finish the Forbidden City. With that I have only resources left to build 1 warrior. I could have built 2, which would have made me completely safe. Or actually not, because then I would have also missed out on another draw. So even with the warfare, I'm not completely safe, but I would only need 1 defense card. Of course, I also have only 1 card in hand, so Amaj might certainly try an aggression here, but there is a chance that I have one, or that I just might draw one. And yeah, with that I was willing to go for that warfare, and thanks to finishing the Forbidden City, I have now the civil action of the Forbidden City, which allows me to also take the breakthrough, which I think is a card that I really have to take here at this turn with being low in science, and yeah, I think the 2 science can turn out to be extremely valuable for me. I draw 2 cards, and I was very relieved to see that I actually do draw the colonization card. So let's see if Amai has an aggression in hand. It is no aggression, it's rather an event. The barbarians are revealed. Sadly, Amai has actually the most culture now. For a while it was drodriguez who could have lost the population now, but sadly the event will do nothing now. Amai goes for a mine upgrade, takes the Great Wall for even more strength, and then takes the reserves and the rich land. Now it's drodriguez's turn. He will go for the monarchy and could have waited for an H2 government form, but maybe just going for a safe monarchy now instead of gambling on when the government forms will be in a row is better. Also, he has already Saladin, will be able to get a code of laws, so he should be fine on civil actions for a while now, and maybe also a bit safer with the 3 military actions, not missing out on that many draws. Now it is my turn. And as you can see, I make an interesting choice here because I actually put the border conflict into the deck. And this turn generally, I will do a bit of an interesting choice, maybe a bit of a questionable one, but also one that I think has some logic to it or might be the right call here. And one card that I will take are those riflemen, and I also thought that I then at the next turn maybe will already develop the riflemen and go for a bunch of upgrades so that I, at the time when the border conflict will be revealed, might be in a position to actually take advantage of the border conflict. Nonetheless, I'm still the weakest here, so you might argue, why do you really want to push here? The thing is, I'm not getting stronger this turn, but in case there are actually some colonies in there, it could be really beneficial if they are revealed maybe at my turn so that I can safely bid without being in danger of an aggression, with being able to rebuild immediately. And with that big colonization payoff in the game, I was at the end willing to push in order to give me the chance that if a colony is in there, it might actually be revealed on my turn. However, there's no colony revealed, instead the Crusades are revealed. As I already mentioned, I will go for the Rifleman here. I could also just take the Alchemy, go for 2 upgrades, maybe take one of those yellow cards, maybe even go for the Masonry in addition to the Alchemy. Those are certainly options. There are some interesting wonders that I could use the Masonry on. I haven't upgraded any urban buildings yet, so that could be something. But I do think my position with having strong resource income, with having already committed to 4 infantry units, the riflemen are just so important and allow me to, if I want to do it, at the next turn actually take the strength lead, at least when my opponents don't get significantly stronger. And if I go for the rifleman, then I can only go for 1 upgrade to alchemy, and generally, while it's maybe not bad to go for the alchemy, I'm also in a position where I have lots of civil actions, I have more than enough resources, so I could easily go into something like scientific method, Harvard College, and I don't necessarily want to block myself from scientific method when I was hoping that likely I will have something useful to invest into soon. So especially when I can only go for 1 upgrade, now that I prioritize those riflemen, I felt like I don't really want to commit to the alchemy. I thought about still taking it in hand, maybe taking it in one of those science yellow cards, and maybe that could be a fine turn. Maybe that could be a fine turn. But there's another card on the row that I might actually likely get for cheap at the next turn, but a card that I think is just perfect for me in the situation. And at the end, instead of spending my civil action on something like alchemy plus a science yellow card, I, despite the risk of maybe the card being taken away being not that high, I at the end ended up just taking Robespierre here. Interesting choice, but I do think the ability to get me cheaply into Republic, afterwards have 4 military action thanks to his one and the one of the warfare, could just really boost my economy, and I think Robespierre is just a perfect leader for me here. drodriguez has already the monarchy, so he very, very likely won't go for Robespierre. Amai could maybe go for him, because he as well still needs an H2 government form and is low in science income, so there is a chance that he would take him for 2, and there is also a chance that Robespierre could help him quite a bit to boost his economy. And at the end, I felt it is maybe actually worthwhile, instead of just spending my civil actions on some of those cards, to just secure myself Robespierre, and either I might get into Conmon soon, or as soon as the Republic appears in the row, I will be able to get into a government form extremely cheaply. If that takes a while, it's maybe also not too bad, because I can at least keep Isabella for a bit of production, and with my current amount of actions, I am not needing a government form desperately. Of course, I still want to get one at some point, and getting that one cheaply with Robespierre might give me quite a boost, but maybe if I have to wait 2 or 3 turns for the Republic, it might be fine, and at the time it will be revealed, it might still be quite strong, being able to go into that government form with Robespierre. So it's a bit of an awkward looking turn, just spending 6 civil actions to take 2 cards for 3 civil actions. But I think both of those cards are extremely helpful for me, and at the end I think it might be a fine choice. I remain the weakest, which is a bit problematic. I draw another colonization card though, so if there is a colony revealed, I might have decent chances to win it now. Amaj, to get out of an uprising, has to play reserves and increases population. He upgrades a mine, actually builds a religion, which, did you see it? He didn't see it, and building that religion could give drodriguez quite a big hint on what event might be on top, because I have seeded a rebellion. It's one of those 2 cards, and him building that religion might very well, the reason for that might very well be that rebellion is on top. And then he takes the breakthrough with his last civil action. Drodriguez cedes. There is indeed a rebellion. Drodriguez will lose 2 civil actions now. It's still just enough for him to go for 1 upgrade on coal. Getting that coal that early I think is quite strong for him, but at least with the rebellion he misses out on, for example, the efficient upgrade or cultural heritage plus bread and circuses. So I do think that does some damage to him here. Now it's my turn, and I this time don't see it, because the border conflict is coming, and I won't actually go for the Rifleman this turn. I considered going for the Rifleman, but the thing is, another very strong card for me appears in the row, and I was hoping that maybe I still have enough time, or that if I don't see it now, go into Scientific Method, and then into Rifleman at the next turn, I might be still just in time to win the border conflict. Only when both of my opponents see it, then the border conflict could be revealed, but it would also have to be the first one out of those 3 cards. So I was hoping that I might have a chance to get my science income, to improve my science income this turn, while still improving my strength in time for the border conflict. And now that the Scientific Method is revealed, I was a bit unhappy about my Robespierre pick, especially because there's also Newton. I do think now having Newton plus Scientific Method would also be extremely strong, with the Republic also not being on the row early, and I didn't really expect it to be available that early, but now I feel like maybe having left, if I would have had left myself open, maybe that could have been beneficial. On the other hand, Robespierre might still turn out to be very useful for me. And I will actually just develop the Scientific Method, go for 2 upgrades, as that gets me out of corruption, and as you can see I'm actually willing to skip the Conmon here, because I do think with the warfare and the additional military action from Robespierre, I am very much willing to wait for the Republic here, which is quite a bit cheaper on Revolution, and also the additional civil action can maybe allow me to do even more stuff. So I actually leave the Conmon on the row here. I keep the Iconoclasm, which with having Robespierre could turn out to be a very beneficial event for me. I thought about putting it already in the next event deck, but then it might actually be revealed too early, plus the border conflict might be revealed too early, so I rather kept it in hand. Amaj seeds, the Pestilence is revealed, which causes him to destroy Lab, which is quite a cost to pay, but maybe he can get a Lab back with starting some food income now. It goes for 2 farm upgrades as well as a mine upgrade, and takes the Conmon, has just the 6 science at the next turn to maybe do a revolution. Amaj has seeded now. I was a bit afraid if drodriguez seeds as well, there's a chance that maybe I am not quick enough for the border conflict. Drodriguez seeds. And sadly the border conflict backfires here. Amaj will gain the additional resources while I have to destroy something, which is not ideal. The next turn I could have gone for a bunch of Rifleman upgrades. I could go for 3, which would put me to 13 strength, but it's a risk that I took and I get punished for it. Drodriguez this turn will go for Nobel, a bit expensive for 2. The strength is of course useful for him, but Newton is available for civil action cheaper. Of course with alchemies he's not ideal, but there's always the chance to go for some bigger buildings later on, and the additional civil actions is also still quite useful. Now he is still in monarchy with Nobel instead of New. Nobel will also cost a civil action at some point in H3, so I'm not sure if Nobel is worth the additional civil action here. On the other hand, an additional science production and the additional strength, of course, might make short-term quite a difference. And then I was a bit unhappy to actually just see him take the railroad. I do think that might be a good choice. With the coal, I do think the railroad is just extremely strong. He could even just finish it at the next turn, maybe even get quite threatening strength-wise. And if he wouldn't have taken it, I certainly would have been happy to go for that here. That is then his whole turn. My turn, I actually push here. I am the weakest. And I think I will actually get stronger this turn, but I don't know if the other events are strength events. It's possible. Amaj did a bit of a strength push, so he could have certainly pushed some strength events. But the thing is, I have now 2 events that I think can be quite beneficial for me and that I want to see revealed very quickly. I have the Iconoclasm still in hand that I planned on seeding soon, and that if it is revealed at the right time and maybe remove some stronger leaders from my opponents, then Robespierre will be for me after the revolution. Could be quite strong, and this event that I see that this turn is the terrorism. And when we take a look at a culture overview, we can see that at the moment I am somewhat significantly behind. I have to be careful. Doing a revolution with Robespierre already gives me 3 culture. If I want to seed a lot, that gives me culture, so I have to be a bit careful, but I was thinking there's a decent chance that I might win the terrorism and that it also could end up doing some damage to my opponents. So I was willing to see it. However, the call to arms are revealed, which costs me sadly some civil actions, and the draws that I'm getting are not really that useful, so it's a bit painful, and I get punished for seeding. I this turn will develop the Rifleman, and I will now make sure to be the strongest. It costs me all of my draws, but it also means that I have all of those military actions out of the way, because the downside of doing the revolution with Robespierre is of course that I can't build any military during the turn, which was actually quite a problem, as we saw in the last video, where I really would have liked to go for Robespierre, but it would have left me potentially very vulnerable. But now I have those military actions out of the way. Hopefully one of those republics will appear, maybe at the next turn, and then I can go for a very cheap Robespierre revolution. I have now still 3 civil actions left. I could take the cavalryman plus maybe reserves or something, or one of those attacks on 1 civil action, securing myself a copy of cavalryman, as I still need a cavalry technology. But Amaj has already the knights, and if I let the cavalryman stay on 2 civil actions, I felt it's very unlikely that he will take those, and it's also very unlikely that there's the danger of them being discarded before my turn, and with that I was willing to not take the cavalryman here, and instead take the opera, the reserves, and the architecture. I have a decent amount of science, I will be able to get into a government form very cheaply, so I was hoping that I have at the end enough science to go potentially for those 2 technologies. The architecture might also help me in case I want to go for an H2 wonder. And that just gives me a way to generate some culture, and also after Robespierre, especially with the Iconoclasm coming, I might want to get into a new leader as quickly as possible, and with that being prepared for a lot of leaders is nice. I have already 2 labs for those lab leaders, now I also have the theater for those theater leaders. I keep the Iconoclasm as well as my defense cards. Amaj will get stronger again by finishing the Great Wall, takes the Rifleman and ends his turn, isn't going for a revolution, so still is in despotism. Drodriguez offers an international trade agreement to me, which I of course happily accepted, gaining an additional food income. He will go for the Code of Laws this turn, has more enough science to support it. Could have just finished the railroad, but decided against it, maybe because there are some cards that he wants to secure for himself. Selective breeding, cavalryman, strategy, I do think that makes sense here. Even though that actually leaves him the weakest, which is a bit annoying now for him, because I was willing to see the Iconoclasm to move the event deck forward. And there's actually another strength event, so those 3 events were all quite heavy strength events, and Drodriguez, with not having finished the railroad, will now lose to the uncertain borders instead of potentially winning them, and losing those uncertain borders actually is quite painful for him, because out of the sudden he has an uprising issue that he can't get out of very easily. Sadly, for me, I was a bit unhappy about the options in the row. There's no Republic, so sadly both of those copies turn out to be late, which is of course a risk that I took. But there's also no H2 Wonder. I am maybe going for something like Harvard College, despite my already good science production. Also, the Eiffel Tower could have been quite interesting. Or if none of those things are there, the selective breeding. The second copy could have been quite nice. I lost a farm now to the border conflict. Just rebuilding that as a selective breeding farm could have been quite nice. And now I am I had to ask myself, how do I actually spend my actions in this turn? And I will start the turn by going for an upgrade to Rifleman, which will just make sure that I'm the strongest, and also again spend a military action before the revolution, so that I have that already out of the way. And then at the end, basically just spent my turn mostly by grabbing some cards. I take the cavalryman, I take the cannons. I think those two technologies just set me up nicely for the military. I haven't a tactic yet, but now I'm prepared for a bunch of tactics, also H3 tactics, so there's the chance that I actually could go for a bit of a military push in H3. I still have 3 civil actions left, but I have a full hand at the moment, and the question is, how do I want to make space in my hand? I could play the reserves, but there's a chance that playing reserves for food might still be worthwhile. But if I play it for food now, I have corruption issues, so of course then I could increase my population, but it might also still be useful for additional resources, so I didn't necessarily want to commit to using the reserves here. And at the end, I felt like the architecture I very likely want to make use of. I could still go for an H2 Wonder. I have at some point certainly will go for some other urban buildings, so I felt like at some point the architecture will be useful. I didn't want to commit to cavalry and cannon, and if I want to go for operas, then probably with the architecture, but the architecture might also be useful without the opera, so I think it's the technology that I'm willing to commit to the most here. Then I can take one more card. I chose the revolutionary idea here. But then again, my hand is full. I could now again just play the reserves or something, but at the end I actually decided to elect Robespierre here, which is of course a bit annoying. It costs me a resource from Isabella. Potentially, if a colony is coming, I could regret electing Robespierre. On the other hand, he is also giving me an additional draw, and with me still fishing for a tactic, that could actually be quite worthwhile, the draw. So I think at the end it's all just because of the draw already worthwhile to elect him now. It should be very likely that at least one of those copies of Republic is available for me at the next turn. And then I, now with making space in my hand by going for Robespierre, can also take another card, and ended up taking the Wave of Nationalism, which has the chance to generate me 6 resources in case my opponents get stronger again. Drodriguez soon will, if he goes for the railroad, or maybe the strategy. Amaj might also get stronger with going for Rifleman, so I felt like the wave likely will give me 6 resources, and that's just too valuable. I miss out on the organized religion, but with the Forbidden City and the opera, I felt like that's fine for now to miss out on a happy face solution. I draw 3 cards here, the Scientific Operation, a Blunder, and a War over Territory. No event to seed. Amaj this turn will go into Scientific Method. Again, could have done a revolution to Conman, but would have been very low in science afterwards. So instead he starts to fix the science income, takes the efficient upgrade and the organized religion. Now it's the Rodriguez turn. He seeds while being the weakest. The popularization of science is revealed, which gives me and the Rodriguez a bit more culture. He will go for the architecture this turn, can use it very nicely on the railroad. Goes up to 11 resource production and also 17 strength, so I think that railroad is quite strong for him. He then takes the team sports and actually has to destroy the mine because of the uncertain border, so that event turned out to be quite painful. Will cost him a bit of resources, a civil action because he has to destroy it now, and that worker is still unhappy, so he could also get punished by events potentially, but now there isn't really a way around it. And as you might see in the row, the first copy of Republic is finally coming, so finally Robespierre can provide some value for me. And this turn I will go for 2 techs, Republic and Selective Breeding, and Rodriguez has good science production. I felt like he might be willing to accept the Scientific Operation, and it might be a pact that we both profit from, even though with my many actions that I will have as soon as I go for the Republic and the Revolutionary Idea and all of those techs that I might still need, I felt like I might get more out of it than Rodriguez, but maybe not that much more that he is willing to reject, and I was very happy to see that he actually accepts, and he also has of course a bunch of technologies already in hand that he can now develop for cheaper, so I do think this pact has the potential to be quite strong. Of course, quite unfortunate for Amaj. Now I and Rodriguez have actually 2 strong pacts together, but Amaj of course would have certainly rejected the Scientific Operation. Yeah, or maybe would have accepted and then cancelled it, but probably just rejected it. So yeah, that's now quite strong for me in drodriguez, and this turn I will play the revolutionary idea, go for the Republic with Robespierre, take the selective breeding, build a farm, upgrade a farm, leaving me with 2 actions that I want to spend taking some yellow cards. I want to take one of those breakthroughs. Despite having good science income, it's still a strong card to get for 1 civil action. I don't need a rich land, but I think 2 breakthroughs are a bit of overkill in the situation, and especially with me being on low military actions, I think the patriotism is the more important card here, so I take a patriotism and a breakthrough. And I'm sitting now at 9 actions. I'm a bit behind in culture, but not too much. And I have no tactic yet, so that could be a problem, but I'm nicely prepared to find a tactic, but I have covered every aspect of my economy, and I have an enormous amount of actions, which gives me now a big advantage over drodriguez, who has the better production for now, also the strength lead, but the many actions give me certainly a bit of an advantage in one regard. I don't get any draws, that's of course a bit of a disadvantage, as I'm still fishing for a tactic. Amaj reveals the Hussar's tactic, is using Jean's military action for that. Elects Bach, increases his population twice, actually builds 2 knights, is now at 18 strength, so that's fine, but on the other hand, it's of course also a bit annoying to have this tactic with the Great Wall, but it's still, the Great Wall is giving him 2 strength, and still going for the Hussars gives him the strength lead for now, so it might still be the correct decision, even though of course ideally you want to have a different tactic with the Great Wall, but you have to work with what you draw. And he doesn't even take the cannons. Maybe it could be an indicator that he actually has also a tactic that he maybe can work with the riflemen, or he just plans on staying on Hussars for the rest of the game. That, however, gives drodriguez the chance to take the cannons, which could be good for him if he has a fitting tactic. He also fixes his food income this turn, develops the team sports. He also developed 2 technologies at his turn, fixes his happy faces, and gets the strongest again. At my turn, I can't really use my politics phase nicely, as I don't have an event to play and I can't use any of those strength cards at the moment. And this turn, I start my turn by increasing my population, which already gets me out of corruption. And then again, I have a bunch of actions to spend. Those H2 wonders I think are a bit late now, especially because I can't finish them immediately. And at the end, I think it's certainly the correct choice to go for the military theory here. Of course, it's not ideal with the warfare, but at least it's also cheaper because of the Scientific Cooperation Pact. And with having those H2 military techs, I am nicely prepared for some H3 tactics, and there is a chance that if I get the right cards, I can go for some very big military, and then I think the military theory is just opens up the door towards getting a win here if I get the right draws. So I want that door to be open, and I think I need to take the military theory here. And before I develop it, I will play the Wave of Nationalism to gain the full 6 resources out of it while I can. Develop the cannons, of course, that's a bit of a commitment, but with having that many riflemen, I almost need the cannons for every tactic that I'm getting from now on. Modern army, positional army, entrenchments, mechanized army, that of course wouldn't be ideal. Only for the shock troops, but the shock troops isn't even that ideal with already being on 4 riflemen. Of course, maybe one of my opponents reveals the classic army tactic, but for most tactics I need a cannon, so I was willing to do that commitment here. Build a cannon. I will only use the 5 resources out of the wave, but still a fine value to get out of that card. I will afterwards go for the military theory, take the urban growth, and as I can't really do a lot else with my last civil action, also take the engineering genius, even though I likely won't go for any of those H2 wonders, and then it's the question if I can use it in a H3 wonder, but there's the chance, and then it might actually score me 4 resources, and I have enough hand space, hopefully. So I was willing to take it. I could have also gone for the journalisms, but there is no Fleming, no Einstein. I have already the opera in hand, not really enough happy faces for the journalism. At the end I felt like it's more likely that the engineering genius will be useful for me than that the journalisms will be useful, especially because there's also a chance to just go for multimedia. I don't get any impact, so I still can't push, which is a bit annoying because I kind of want to get those events out, terrorism and iconoclasm. At least I have a bunch of defense cards now, also another aggression. Amaj goes for the Rifleman, goes for 1 upgrade, reveals the Conquistadors tactic, going up to 22 strength, not getting any draws though, and then he goes for late Harvard College, which he can't even finish at the next turn, so that's expensive. But on the other hand, he also really needs science. Maybe there's also an event coming that could help him with finishing the Harvard College quicker, so it's a bit late. I'm not sure if it is correct, but Amai is generally in a bit of a challenging position, and maybe we can also use that time now to take a look at the overview. And Amai has the culture lead, but as I just wanted to say, he's still in despotism, very low in science, only 2 military actions. The Conquistadors tactic isn't really a great tactic to get a lot of strength from long term. So I do think Amai has a lot of problems here, and despite the culture lead and despite the potential of maybe getting a lot of culture out of Bach, I would evaluate his position the weakest here. I and drodriguez have just clearly better economies. I have many civil actions and just very solid production in every regard, and drodriguez has the very strong resource production while being a little bit limited in civil actions. So I think we have the edge here over Amai, and then between us, I think both positions have their advantages, but I think I might prefer my position. I think 3 additional civil actions per turn can just go a long way. I have already a bunch of yellow cards in hand, drodriguez has none, so that already makes up for, first of all, the amount of resources saved up, and also in future turns, maybe with taking more yellows, I will make up the production difference, and I, with having that many civil actions, can maybe allow myself to go for a red cross during 1 turn if I save a bit of food up, so I have just a lot of opportunities, and I also have maybe the more promising military setup. I already have 6 military actions, have all of the H2 techs, so also military-wise I might be in a better position to maybe get a big war going. So I was thinking that I have a solid position here, but both my opponents could still build up something strong. Maybe Amai can get away with it unpunished, do some culture with Bach, or maybe drodriguez finds a way to invest his better resource production in a very efficient way. And one of those things to invest into might be in a row already. It takes the computers, however, interestingly, he isn't developing them yet. Or really, he builds the cannons, then he develops the strategy, takes the reserves, which of course puts him ahead militarily. However, if he would have gone for computer upgrades already this turn, I do think that could have been given him quite a boost in his economy. Then he gets the science income earlier, maybe he can develop even more techs with the scientific corporation, maybe he can go into an H3 government form earlier, which I think would give him a significant boost. So while of course maybe there's a big strength event coming, maybe he's just gambling on that there might be one, so that might of course be reasons, but now if I should end up developing 2 techs at my next turn, which to be honest is not that likely, but it's a possibility maybe, is it? Not really. I guess that's not really something that he has to be afraid of, unless maybe a communism or something appears in the row. So he likely has enough science to get into computers at the next turn, but I do think that 1 turn of delaying the production maybe is just too much of a price to pay, even though he gets the strength lead now. But it might of course depend on what events will now be revealed. None event will be revealed during my turn because I have no impact to see it. And at my turn I will go for a line that I maybe wouldn't have gone necessarily for, but it allows me to use my politics action, and with that I do think it's probably the correct choice. And I also was quite happy that I had this option available, because at my turn I will actually declare war over territory over Amai. I have of course no tactic, but if you take a look at the card draw, a wonder appeared. First of all, I will actually also go for Steve Jobs. Iconoclasm is coming, and I felt like he is a very decent replacement, especially because I actually need the happy faces from him right now. So I go for Steve Jobs. I wanted to secure him for myself. And then I also go for the Manhattan Project, which gives me a bit of culture, but mostly, of course, quite a bit of strength, and to combine with the war that will allow me to hopefully steal 2 yellow tokens from Amai. If he goes for 1 upgrade, then he's 9 strength behind. I could also finish the Manhattan Project and maybe somehow get some additional strength, but it wasn't easily possible, so I didn't do it and expected to steal 2 yellow tokens from him. However, with being 9 strength ahead of him, I then at the next turn might actually have chances to maybe go for one of those aggressions, as Amai is still stuck on 2 military actions. So with that, I just maybe allow myself the opportunity to make good use out of my politics actions, apply a bit of pressure on my opponents, even though it's a bit expensive to take the Manhattan Project here. But I still had at the end, I still think it's just a very strong play here, and I didn't see any alternative that I liked more. So I will finish the Manhattan project. Also gives me immediately a way to use that engineering genius, which with that turned out to be a good grab. I go up to 35 strength. I score 6 culture, which is even a bit annoying. Also the culture that I will get from Steve Jobs, because the terrorism is looking like it could actually get a bit of a problem for me. Maybe I actually have to accept here that I will just have something destroyed at some point. But for now, maybe I can still have some hope um, to not get hit by it. I will actually already elect Steve Jobs. Not sure if it is the correct choice. If I wouldn't have elected him, now the last civil action for me will be to increase my population, which gets me out of corruption and also just spends the civil action. If I wouldn't have elected Steve Jobs, I would have had now an unhappy worker and I could have gotten hit by an immigration or civil unrest. And that was already the reason for electing him, and I don't think there's any other reason. The iconoclasm likely, I guess. If both of my opponents see, then I could push, and then also the iconoclasm could already be revealed. And Robespierre, the military action might still be useful at the next turn. Maybe there could be a communism on the row, so there might be some scenarios where I will regret having elected Steve Jobs already, but at the end, the happy face events that I could get punished by were reason enough for me to already go for Steve Jobs this turn. I was of course interested to see my draw. I was especially hoping for a tactic, and of course a war could be interesting. I don't get any of those things for now, but I do get some aggressions and an impact that maybe if I play towards it could be interesting. But of course drodriguez has already gone for the computers now. Amaj increases his population, builds a lab to get some science, upgrades the warrior to go up to 26 strength, then takes the engineering genius and the movies, interestingly. I mean, maybe he just needs to hope that he somehow gets away with it. On the other hand, maybe it's more realistic to maybe work with operas, and maybe it would have been just the safest to go for the patriotism here to have more resource for the military. Yeah, maybe Amaj also just needs to hope that he will be able to go into those buildings at some point. And the engineering genius is nice, as it will allow him to finally finish the Harvard College at the next turn. But he's 9 strength behind, and unless that card and that card is a defense card, I can pull off an aggression at the next turn. drodriguez at his turn takes Bill Gates for 3 civil actions, which is somewhat expensive, but he has the computers for him. And if he doesn't go for him, there's a good chance that I might take him away, and might actually also be quite a nice fix for Amaj's economy. So drodriguez is willing to take Gates for 3 here, but it is expensive. He is only on 6 civil actions. He already has maybe some issues to get all the investments done that he wants to do, and he also will miss another civil action electing Bill Gates because of having Nobel. Now we can see the downsides of Nobel and maybe the upsides that Newton could have potentially had for drodriguez. So he will take Bill Gates, could have elected him and maybe gone for a computer upgrade, but he is maybe a bit afraid of what I threaten, because he doesn't know that I don't have a tactic to work with. So I do think it might make sense here for him to build a cavalryman, take the democracy, but he hasn't elected Bill Gates yet. He still hasn't gone into computers, so that is kind of starting to get a bit late. He reveals the tactic, the Napoleonic armies, so if I don't get any other tactic, I can at least copy to the tactic. At my turn, I will steal 2 yellow tokens from Amaj, and then I have 3 different aggressions to choose from. And there's the blunder, but probably it's not the correct choice, because the Occupy is just a lot better. I get a lot more stuff out of it. It costs me a draw, so maybe keeping Robespierre could have been worthwhile now in hindsight. Maybe I should have kept him because I knew that I had that aggression in hand. Maybe that was actually a misplay. Because then I could go for the Occupy now while still drawing 3 cards. Now it costs me a draw. So I need to consider, is the Occupy the one draw that I'm missing out on worthwhile the stuff that I get from it, or do I rather maybe just go for an armed intervention? But I do think the influx of food, resources, science, and a bit of culture, and also the damage that I do to Amaj, which was not the main reason, because I think Amaj already has not the greatest position. But still, the Harvard College will get further delayed, so maybe there's the chance to capitalize on Amaj's weak position later on. So I, at the end, went with the Occupy, but maybe I should have kept Robespierre, because then I would have actually gotten an additional draw this turn. And this turn, as you can see, I will actually go for the oil. I could also just develop the opera, start building some operas. That would be a fine choice. I have already a bit of a lead towards drodriguez. That could be a fine way to play, but the advantage of the oil is that I just keep myself flexible. If I get the right cards for the military, I can still go for a military push, and if not, I can still go for building up of culture, and thanks to having the oil, I will be better prepared for a bunch of impacts, and that flexibility was worth enough for me to go for the oil here, and also the fact that I can go for 2 upgrades immediately, because otherwise I think it would be too late for the oil here. But I can develop it for 7 science with the scientific operation pact, score 4 culture with Steve Jobs, go up to 12 resource production, and then I increase my population, getting out of corruption, take the revolutionary idea, take the reserves, and play the reserves for resources. With that, I also have 11 food saved up at the next turn, and when I play those reserves for food, I have a chance of just taking and finishing Red Cross, so I was just setting myself up for some different options. I could still get some military draws and maybe do something with the military. I can go for Red Cross, I can just start building up some operas, maybe a big space flight is possible with Steve Jobs in the Scientific Operation Pact, so I stayed somewhat flexible and was generally quite happy about my position, but of course drodriguez still has computer skates in hand. There's still the chance that he might be able to do something with it, but he might be limited here because of his low civil action count. I draw another aggression as well as the impact of strength. Impact of strength might be interesting. Amaj's turn, after losing the yellow tokens, has to go for an upgrade to organized religion, takes the revolutionary idea, the military build-up, and builds the step of the Harvard College. Now it's drodriguez's turn. He seeds, opens the international negotiations. There was actually a strength event on top, maybe the reason why he prioritized building that cannon earlier on. He is now at least not the one who loses to that event, and he will actually make it that Amai has to pay some resources to me, which again is quite annoying for Amai. Even with that, at least he is still able to finish the Harvard College at the next turn, and maybe for me, with having oil production, the resources are not that useful, but they can still be useful, so I was still happy to get those resources, of course. drodriguez goes for an upgrade to computers, takes the fast food chains, which at least means that he can take neither Red Cross nor the space flight away from me, at least for some time. He then builds the cannon, and another cavalryman takes the strength lead here, is actually willing to miss out on some draws, which could be an indicator that maybe he has already some cards in hand that he wants to have in hand, for example a war. I don't have a war in hand. I fine with not building up any military this turn, and so with both impact of strength and science at the moment being in favor of drodriguez, I didn't want to commit to either of those, and with Amai still being into military actions despite having drawn 2 more cards, I still thought I should have a good shot at a successful aggression, and that's also what I'm getting here. Then at my turn I will just take a bunch of technologies in hand for Steve Jobs, and then I will develop the civil service, I will develop the opera, I go for an opera, starting a bit of culture income. I take the urban growth, I take the reserves, I increase my population, I play the patriotism, build another cannon without missing out on any draws, so I still build up a bit of military. I could have also just built another opera. I do think I could play it very differently here. I could have also just built another lab for more science income with Steve Jobs and for a potential space flight, but yeah, I kind of wanted to build this additional cannon and maybe making it more easily possible to capitalize on some additional strength if I get the right cards, and not committing the population to any urban buildings yet. But maybe just building an opera instead of playing the patriotism could also be fine. Yeah, but like this, I'm again prepared for the Red Cross. I can just build up more cultural production, and I have the potential for some big military if I get the right tactic. And I can already use the Napoleonic army tactic, but of course I also don't have a war in hand, so I was interested to see what cards I might draw. I draw 2 more aggressions in impact, but no war and no tactic. Amai offers a peace treaty to drodriguez. Probably didn't really expect that this will get accepted, but you can try it anyway, but drodriguez rejects it. Amai this turn can finally go for the conmon. Him being stuck on despotism for that long, I think, was a big downside, and maybe if I would have let him Robespierre and he would have gone for him, that could have actually been quite strong, so maybe it was also in that sense, maybe the right call to take Robespierre. Amai finishes the Harvard College, actually takes the tanks, allowing him to upgrade those knights to tanks, getting strength without requiring population. there being 2 copies, maybe it could have been also fine to just take some yellow cards instead and hope that the tanks will be available for cheaper, especially as he is maybe in a position where he needs to start playing to his outs and hoping for some good stuff to be happening to him. But of course, if he doesn't have the tanks available, he might be limited in how he can react and how he can prepare himself for the strength. So it might be fine to just make sure that he has the tanks available. And he also does immediately get hit by a war. Drodriguez declares a war. There's also a copy of Air Force that is revealed in his turn, which of course is helpful for him to make that war even more threatening. He builds an Air Force. Could have destroyed something, but then he is missing 1 resource to build another Air Force, and so instead he just takes the reserves. And again, he is missing out on electing Bill Gates here. Of course, maybe it's fine to keep the additional strength from Nobel, but he takes the reserves here for the last civil action. He would have gotten 6 resources out of just electing Bill Gates. And there's a reasonable chance that amaj might actually just resign, because I think the position is actually looking relatively hopeless here for him. So I do think maybe just electing Bill Gates would have been maybe the better call here. Even though, of course, the reserves can also be used for food. Again, none of those impacts look really that great at the moment against Drodriguez. His impact of variety is quite strong as well, so I can go for another aggression. amaj still hasn't found the defense cards that he needs, but I'm also now 12 strength ahead, so he again at this point would need 2 H3 defense cards, and he hadn't that many draws. So I still thought it's likely, but yeah, also a bit unfortunate that amaj can't defend here. I still another 7 culture from him. I will go for the space flight. There's no red cross in the row, so I will just take whatever I can here, which in this case is the space flight. And then I developed a cavalryman so that there is no danger of potentially the age ending and me not having a chance to go for those cavalrymen. I will also build one and actually copy the tactic, I think. No, I think I will not copy the tactic to get the draws, but I still build the 1 cavalryman in order to be safe from an aggression from Drodriguez. Otherwise I would be in danger, and that was a risk that I was not willing to take in this situation. And I built an additional lab. I could have just gone for an additional opera, but I came to the conclusion that it might likely result in me being able to develop an additional technology, which might be worth quite a lot with having Steve Jobs' spaceflight and Nobel Prizes soon. I draw an impact of competition as well as a defense card, and amaj indeed just resigns, and it's a consequential resign, because it's not only a resign from this game, but with finishing last in this game, it's also clear that he will actually be eliminated from the tournament, which is of course quite unfortunate for him, and also a bit unfortunate that the tournament system works that way. It's a bit unfair that you can get eliminated out of the upper bracket directly up until stage 3. Yeah, so of course a very frustrating moment here, and also the game in generally maybe frustrating to him, and yeah, sadly for him that will be the end of his tournament run. And I do think with getting hit by that war there is not really any hope left for him, and yeah, it's very reasonable to resign here. That means that only Drodriguez and I are left in the game. Drodriguez seeds, and I actually get hit by a very late Raiders. He will increase his population. Finally, I collect Bill Gates, taking him for 3. Of course, he also took him away from amaj, but I think his low civil action count at the end really cost him. And also Nobel not giving the civil action back, I think, is a serious drawback. So now I was very confident that I should be able to win this game. And I could potentially, I actually don't see it, because still all of those impacts are at the moment at least not really that great, and I was not willing to commit to any of them. I could just develop some techs and at the next turn try to make my space flight as big as possible, but at the end I think I didn't do any big calculations, but just played by gut feeling here. And at the end I developed 2 techs this turn, scoring 8 culture with Steve Jobs, scoring a Nobel Prize, developing those to have them for the space flight, and then I have just enough civil actions left to finish the space flight for still a very good amount of 32 points. I could have actually made that quite big. 38 I should have been able to reach, I think. And then afterwards I can take the red cross. Drodriguez can build a step, but I will get 4. Sadly, there's no colony in play, so it's not a greatest red cross, but still it will be a second wonder that will score me quite a nice amount of points, and actually already my 3rd H3 wonder. And taking that one card also ends the age. I draw some new cards. Age 4 starts. drodriguez seeds. I was hoping that the terrorism won't be revealed, because if it is revealed after drodriguez turn, then it won't be evaluated, but sadly he can destroy one of my buildings now. He plays the endowment for 6 culture, goes for the democracy, reveals the mechanized army tactic, builds a step on the red cross, builds another computer, scores him 3 points with gates, upgrades a mine, could be an indicator towards impact of industry. Yeah, I haven't drawn the impact of industry, so it might be in there. And then he just finishes the fast food chains for 22 points. Now it is my turn. I will at my turn be able to overtake drodriguez in strength, so I seeded the impact of strength into the deck. The vast territory is revealed, I passed. It is more helpful for me if drodriguez actually loses a bit of strength. I haven't put the impact of colonies in there, so I was willing to pass here. drodriguez wins it for a cavalryman, keeps the swordsman for impact of variety, and I could have seeded it, I haven't had it in hand, but it isn't in there. And with that he actually loses 1 strength more, which makes it a bit more easily possible for me to play around impact of strength. This turn I could do a variety of different stuff, and I thought about some different lines, but I have a big lead, and I, at the end, didn't put any very big calculations into it. I just go for 2 technologies, scoring another Nobel Prize with Steve Jobs, finishing the Red Cross, building a movie, destroying a Rifleman, building a Cavalryman, securing my strength lead, but now I can actually disband another Rifleman, play the reserves, and build another opera for some culture income, which actually also makes it that I overtake drodriguez in culture income for a potential impact of culture. There's no impact seeded by Amaj, but drodriguez is a bit behind, and maybe he could have seeded an impact because he just needs to hope for something good. And then before the final impacts, I have quite a big lead. drodriguez will of course get the Bill Gates bonus, but yeah, that game I should be able to win. There is actually the impact of culture, so I gain plus 10 against drodriguez. There is the impact of harmony, which gives me plus 20, same for drodriguez. Then there is the impact of architecture, which is a bit better for drodriguez, but not that much. And the last impact is the impact of strength that I've just seeded, which at the end means that after the Bill Gates bonus I have 80 points lead. So yeah, at the end that game went quite well for me. I had an early iron setup with Code of Laws, with the Stonehenge. I do think getting both of those cards for 1 civil action gave me quite a boost in the early game. I then went for the Forbidden City, had already with that a fine amount of civil actions to work with, combined with some strong resource income. My science was low, and in order to help me to get into government form, I did this interesting move of taking Robespierre for 3. And while Newton appeared on the road together with scientific method at the following turn, I still think, it worked out quite well. I got into Republic while still being able to do all of the different stuff. I was able to develop a lot of technologies, and at the end I was able to win this game. drodriguez, of course, if Amaj wouldn't have had resigned, maybe would have gotten some more culture, but at the end I think even with Amaj not resigning, I still have very good chances to win this game. Of course, maybe drodriguez could have a second war, who knows, maybe that could be enough for him to overtake me, but still then he also maybe misses out on some other points that he now spent on doing some peaceful stuff. So no, at the end my many civil actions, I think, carried me in age 3, and of course also the ability to go for a lot of aggressions against Amaj. This early Manhattan project helped me a lot. Amaj, had a bit of a challenging situation going into age 3. Being stuck on 2 military actions at that point is just extremely dangerous, and with the Manhattan project he wasn't able to defend against those aggressions, which of course then also gave me quite a bunch of culture. I actually gained way more culture out of those aggressions than drodriguez got out of that war. And yeah, with that, some things are decided in the group. As I already said, Amaj sadly will now be eliminated, and as I said in the beginning, with me winning this game, I have now secured my first spot in the group. But in order to illustrate that, we can also take a quick look at the standings. And yeah, as you can see, I have now 7 games finished, 30 points, and now it is clear I will be able to win this group and move on to the upper bracket of the next stage. I'm very happy about how that stage went for me. Of course, I had that one defeat, but apart from that, the games went very smoothly for me. I do think I also had a bit of luck in some of those games. Vlada, and especially in the first games that we saw, blessed me with a lot of wars, aggressions, and made it easy to capitalize on the position that I had in the game. So those things went nicely for me. Yeah, but at the end, I'm just happy that I was able to win this group. However, one game is left. It's a 2-player game against drodriguez, and the one last thing that isn't decided yet in the group is who finishes second and who third. Which doesn't make a big difference. Both of those places will result in being transferred to the lower bracket for the next stage, but it could still make a difference for in which seeding basket those players land. So in the next game we will see the conclusion of the season and which will be the second place player. And of course, ideally, I want to get another win to end this stage on a good on a good note for me, and to also really make sure that I'm on the top seeding basket out of the players coming out of the upper bracket of stage 3. Alright, with that we are at the end of the video. Thanks for watching, have a nice time, and see you in the next video.